Life is made of choices. It becomes what we choose. Hi everyone. Today we are going to read a very interesting poem, The Road Not Taken, written by Robert Frost from your class 9 book, Beehive. This poem talks about how life keeps a lot of choices in front of us and we have to choose one amongst all those because we cannot choose everything. So whenever we sit and think on those choices, we have to decide very rationally which choice can be benefiting for us. This poem, The Road Not Taken, was written by Robert Frost in 1916 when he also had this choice to make whether or not to be a poet. Let's read this poem today and find out what Robert Frost had in his mind when he wrote this poem. So in today's session, I will read out and explain this poem stanza-wise, after which I will summarize each and every stanza. Then I'll talk about the theme of this poem, the significance of the title and the moral given by it. And at the end of the session, you will find question answers after my explanation. So let's begin with this session today. And before we jump into the reading and explanation, let me tell you something about Robert Frost first. Robert Lee Frost was born on 26 March 1874 in San Francisco, California. He was an American poet, but his work was initially published in England before it was published in the US. The only poet to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry, he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in 1960 for his poetic works. On July 22, 1961, Frost was named Poet Laureate of Vermont. His well-known poems are The Road Not Taken, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, Mending Wall, Nothing Gold Can Stay, and more. He died on 29 January 1963 in Boston, Massachusetts, US. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. The poet says that once upon a time in his life, he came to a junction where there were two roads in front of him. Two roads which were separating in different directions or diverging. In a yellow wood. A yellow wood is a forest in autumn season where all the leaves have grown yellow in color. But this yellow wood is a symbolism for this world, which is full of people. Some people are even older than the poet. The poet says that when he came to this diversion where he had two roads in front of him, he felt sorry that he could not travel both the roads. He had to choose one between the two. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. The poet, as a lonely traveler, stood there for a long time. he kept thinking, he kept contemplating on both these roads, trying to make a decision. He looked at both the roads as far as he could, to the point where they bent in undergrowth, means under dense growth of plants. Before taking the path, he wanted to know how it was. Was it suitable for him or not? In the first stanza, the poet says that he is in a forest. It is a yellow wood where he comes across two roads. They are diverging, they are going in separate directions. And he was the only traveler there. He kept looking at the roads, trying to make a decision which one to take. And he kept looking at the road till it went under the bushes or till it was hidden under the bushes. Now, if we compare it with the life also gives us many choices, many alternatives. Of course, we cannot take all the choices. So we have to stop, pause, and think on those choices. We need to think about all the pros and cons, about the circumstances it is going to show in front of us if we decide on one thing or the other. So, the first stanza of the poem talks about the choices in life and how we must think before we decide. Then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim. Now the poet, after thinking about both the roads for a long time, he decided to take a particular road. Both the roads that day looked equally good to him. The one which he wanted to take was as good as the other one. But that road which he opted for seemed like a better claim or a better option for him. Why? Because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. The poet chose this another path because it was grassy. Grassy means it was unused, and it wanted wear, which means no one had walked over it. So this path which he took or which he chose was a path which no one else had chosen. It was very rarely chosen by people. And then he started to walk on it. The passing there refers to walking on the road. So when the poet started to walk on that road, he went a little distance. He saw that this road also had been worn or had been used about the same as the other road which he had not taken. By the second stanza, the poet Robert Frost has already decided which one to take. Now he has two roads. One road was taken up by many people frequently. It was chosen very commonly. But the other road wasn't chosen commonly by anyone. So he decided to go on that path which was not chosen by anyone. And on that morning, that day when he looked at both the roads, he felt that both the roads were the same. They looked the same. But he chose the uncommon path because it was grassy, it seemed green, and nobody had walked on that path. So he started to walk. But when he went a little far, he realized that both the roads seemed to be used in the same manner. There was no difference in those roads. So come to think of life, that in life we also have choices. After thinking a lot, we choose one path, we decide on one alternative, and we feel that that alternative may bring some difference in our life. We may sometimes get an urge to decide on that path of life which is not taken up by many people. And so we start off. But as we go ahead with our decision, we come across a point where we can see that both the choices have the same benefits, same advantages, disadvantages, and there is no difference between the two. Every path that we choose in life has got some advantage or disadvantage. So there is no choice which has only advantages and no disadvantages or no losses. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Now on that morning, the poet felt that both the roads seem equal. They were equally fresh because the leaves which had fallen there had no steps on them. Or, in other words, no one had walked on that path, and it was never taken by anyone due to uncertainty, because the leaves which were fallen on those roads were still fresh. No one had walked over those leaves. Oh, I kept the first for another day. And when the poet chose the second path, he thought that he will take the other path, the first path which he has not taken today, he'll keep it reserved for some other day. That is, in future, he might take the other path again. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Now, the poet knew that how one path will lead to another new path. That is, when one decision is taken, then that decision will open new, more decisions in front of him. But it is very rare. He doubted if he would ever come back and would be able to take the first road as well. So, in the third stanza, when the poet finally chooses the path to take, he feels that someday he may come back to that junction again and take up the other path which he had not taken. That is, the road not taken. The poet at this point of time was well aware that when he has chosen one path, that path will lead to some more path ahead of him, or that decision will make him take some more decisions in the same direction, but he won't be able to change his path. Still, the poet had this hope that someday he might take the road which he had not taken on that day. But logically speaking, that wasn't possible. The poet thought that he might be able to turn back the time and revise his decision. But in real life, it's not possible. Once you decide on something, you cannot go back. You cannot turn back the time and change your decision. This is what is being taught in stanza 3. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. The poet says that in future, I shall be telling this to other people with a deep breath, with a sigh, that he too had come to a situation where he had to choose one out of the two, where he had choices, but he had to decide on one thing. It was like two roads which were separating in a wood. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. The poet decided that in future, when he will talk about this decision, he will tell everyone that he had taken the road which was less traveled by or less chosen by the general people. And because he had taken that less traveled road, that decision has made a difference in his life. And in the last stanza, the poet expresses that someday in future, when he will tell about this decision to other people, he will tell them that he chose a different path. He chose a path which was not commonly traveled by people. And because he chose a different path, because he did not choose a common path, all that particular decision made a difference in his life. So students, in future also, when you'll get a chance, when you are talking about your choices in life with someone else, then you can proudly say, the choice that you made you what you are today. The poet says that the path we don't choose is the road not taken. And we also sometimes think about those decisions which we don't take, which we left, the road that we left. And then we also get into that reflection whether we did the right thing or wrong. Would it have affected our life in a different way? Would that road have led us to a different destination? But the poet here also explains through this poem that whatever we may choose, we have to think and choose, because we only have to bear its consequences, whether good or bad. And that's exactly is the moral of this poem. Let's now understand the poetic devices and the rhyme scheme used in this poem? The most common literary device or poetic device used in this poem is symbolism. A symbol is a person, a place, a thing, or an event that has meaning in itself and stands for something beyond itself as well. So, symbols are commonly known as representing the other item. Let's see what symbols are used in this poem, The Road Not Taken. The road in the poem represents the direction of life or the choices we make in our lives. Wood symbolizes our lives. Morning symbolizes a new beginning in life. The next poetic device that we are going to talk about is alliteration. It is the use of the same beginning consonant sound in a line or verse. Let's look at some examples of alliteration in this poem. In wanted where, w sound is repeated. That the sound is repeated. First for, f sound is repeated. Anaphora is the repetition of the same word at the beginning of phrases or sentences. Now let's look at some examples of anaphora used here in the poem. In the first stanza of the poem, the word and is repeated in second, third, and fourth lines. So this is an example of anaphora. Repetition refers to repeating the same word, phrase, or sentence in either a line or in the entire poem. In the line somewhere ages and ages hence, the word ages is repeated. Therefore, it's an example of repetition. Similarly, two roads diverged. This phrase is used repeatedly in this poem and thus also forms an example of repetition. Personification is a poetic device which is used when the poet wants to give human qualities to animals or inanimate objects. Now let's see what are the examples of personification used in this poem. Because it was grassy and wanted wear, and having perhaps the better claim. In both these examples, the road is personified. Since road is an inanimate object, it can neither want nor have a claim like humans. It cannot think. Therefore, the poet has used personification here. A rhyme scheme is a pattern of rhymes at the end of each line of a poem. It is usually referred to by using letters to indicate which lines rhyme. Lines designated with the same letter all rhyme with each other. Now, as an example, to find out the rhyme scheme of this poem, let's take the first stanza of the poem and know how to find out its rhyme scheme. To find out the rhyme scheme of any stanza, we need to look at the last word of each line. If the last words rhyme with each other, we give it the same letter or else a different letter. Let's look at the first stanza. The first line ends with the word would, and the first line will always have the letter A. The second line ends with both. Now, since both and would do not rhyme with each other, that line will have a new letter B. The third line ends with stood, which rhymes with would, so it will have the same letter A. Could also rhymes with stood and would, and therefore the fourth line will also have the same letter A. The last line ends with the word undergrowth, which rhymes with both. Since both has the letter B, the last line will also have the letter B. Therefore, the rhyme scheme of this stanza is AB, AA, B. That's all in today's session. I hope you enjoyed and understood the poem as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. See you in my next video. I'll come up with a new topic. Till then, take good care of yourself and bye-bye.